When the rain came to Hollow's edge, it never left easily. It clung to the roofs, the trees, and even to the hearts of those who lived there, like a sickness that refused to die. The village was a small, forgotten place, surrounded by swamps and whispering forests. And at its center stood Blackwell Manor, a colossal stone house older than memory itself. No one remembered who built it, but everyone remembered who last lived there. Dr. Elias Blackwell, the physician who healed the sick by day and performed unspeakable experiments by night. His disappearance 50 years ago was the only thing that ever brought peace to the manor, until the night Adrian Cole arrived. Adrian wasn't a man easily frightened. As a journalist with a thirst for the unexplained, he'd spent years chasing ghost stories for magazines that paid more for fiction than for truth. But when he received the letter, something was different. The paper was yellowed, the elegant handwriting shaking, yet the words pulled him in like gravity. The truth of Hollow Sh lies beneath Blackwell Manor. Come before the next full moon. It was unsigned, and yet, somehow, he knew it was meant for him. He arrived on a cold October evening, the air soaked in a fog thick enough to drown the stars. The villagers barely spoke when he asked about the manor. At the local inn, a hollow-eyed woman with trembling hands poured his tea and whispered, "If you go there, you won't come back." Adrian just smiled politely and went anyway. The road to Blackwell Manor was a skeleton of what it once was, broken stones swallowed by roots, trees leaning in as if trying to keep him from reaching the gates. When the manor finally rose before him, it was like a tomb cracking open. The iron gates were rusted shut, but he pushed through. Inside, the garden had become a wilderness of dead vines and faceless statues. The front doors, though heavy as sin, opened without a sound, as if the house had been waiting for him. The air inside was cold and stale, like breath trapped for decades. Dust hung thick in the beam of his flashlight, and the walls were lined with portraits of the Blackwell family. Their eyes were painted so vividly they seemed to follow his every move. He wandered from room to room, noting the eerily preserved state of everything. Tables were still set, clocks frozen in time, candles melted into black waxy tears. In the dining hall, a long table was covered by a dark sheet. When Adrian lifted it, he found words scratched deep into the wood. "Do not go below." He let out a soft laugh. Every haunted house needed its warning, after all. But the sound of his laugh didn't echo, it was just swallowed. He found the staircase to the basement behind a locked door in the kitchen. The lock was new, too new. Someone had been here recently. He broke it open with a fire iron and descended into the darkness. The air grew colder the deeper he went, until he could see his own breath. The steps ended in a stone corridor, lined with shelves full of jars. Each one contained something cloudy, floating, and unidentifiable. Medical instruments lay scattered on tables, scalpels, syringes, bone saws, and then he saw it. A journal, sitting on a table beneath a single oil lamp that flickered weakly, even though no one had lit it. The cover read, "Experiments of E. Blackwell." He opened it, and his heart began to race. The entries started out methodical notes on anatomy, disease, and theories about the continuity of consciousness. But as he turned the pages, they grew more disturbing. The handwriting became wild, the language desperate. "The soul can be contained," one entry read, "but it resists. It burns through the vessel if not properly bound." Another said, "The last subject failed. I must try with my own flesh. Only through the self can the bridge be completed." The final page was just a single sentence, written over and over again. "I can still hear them beneath the floor." That's when Adrian heard it too. A sound faint but real, like a whisper, or a sigh, coming from somewhere deeper in the cellar. He followed it through a narrow passageway that twisted down like the throat of the earth. The walls changed from cut stone to raw, slick rock. The sound grew louder, no longer a whisper but a cacophony of voices. Dozens of them, whispering, crying, murmuring his name. His name, Adrian. He froze. His flashlight flickered, and in that strobe of light, he saw shapes moving in the dark. Human shapes, pale and wrong. He turned and ran back up the tunnel, his breath ragged, his heart slamming against his ribs. But when he reached the basement door, it was closed. He hadn't closed it. The handle was ice cold, and when he pulled, it wouldn't budge. Something on the other side was holding it shut. Then he heard the footsteps, slow, heavy, coming down the stairs. The beam of his flashlight caught a figure, tall, thin, dressed in a doctor's coat, soaked in something dark. Its face was half hidden by shadow, but he could see the glint of metal where its eyes should have been. "You came," the figure rasped. Adrian stumbled back, tripping over a table. "Who are you?" he shouted, though a cold dread told him he already knew. "Dr. Elias Blackwell," the voice said, calm and hollow. "I never left." The doctor stepped closer, and the air grew colder still. His flesh looked gray and tight, his movements jerky, as if he were being pulled by invisible strings. "The soul cannot die," he whispered. "It only needs a new home. You came for the truth, Adrian. You will carry it." He raised his hand, and the shadows in the room slithered along the floor like smoke. Adrian swung his flashlight, but it passed right through the figure, the light bending and warping. Then came the pain, sharp and electric, right behind his eyes. Images flooded his mind, experiments, screams, 100 faces all melting into one. He saw the doctor standing over a patient, cutting into flesh that screamed without a sound. He saw jars filled not with organs, but with fragments of something luminous, souls. When he woke, he was lying on the cold floor. The basement door was open. Morning light streamed weakly through the cracks upstairs. He stumbled out of the manor, dazed, his camera and recorder gone. The villagers found him hours later, wandering near the swamp, muttering, "He's still down there." Weeks passed before he recovered enough to leave his room. But he never left Hollow's Edge. Something kept him there, something inside him that wasn't entirely his own. He began to hear voices again, whispering to him when he was alone. They told him to go back, to finish the work. And one night, under a blood moon, he did. The manor welcomed him this time. The gates opened before he touched them. The house was alive with sound breathing, murmuring. The portraits on the walls had changed. Every face now looked like his. He walked to the basement without hesitation. The journal was still there, open to a new page that hadn't existed before. The ink was fresh. It read, Adrian Cole, Experiment 132, Transfer Successful. He felt his hands tremble, though not with fear, with recognition. He finally understood. He wasn't the observer anymore. He was the continuation. From that night on, no one saw Adrian again. The villagers swore they sometimes saw lights flickering in the manor's windows, and shadows moving behind the curtains. The innkeeper who'd warned him vanished too, her room found empty except for a note that said, "He's calling them all." Decades passed. The forest grew thicker, the village smaller, the manor sank deeper into legend, until one day, a new journalist came, chasing stories of a haunted doctor and a cursed reporter who never returned. The villagers gave the same warning, the same fearful glance. But curiosity is a disease of its own. The newcomer went, camera in hand, up the winding road to Blackwell Manor. The gates opened. Inside the house was quiet, waiting, and on the dining table, beside a long dead candle, lay a single sheet of paper. Written in precise, elegant handwriting were the words, "The truth of Hollow's Edge lies beneath Blackwell Manor. Come before the next full moon." And beneath that, in a darker hand, almost carved into the paper, was a single name, Adrian Cole. Thank you so much for joining me on this chilling journey into Blackwell Manor. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. And as always, be careful what stories you chase. You never know who or what might be waiting at the end. Stay safe out there.